Excuse me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi. We're live with Can I Talk with Roz. I'm currently at the, as you can see, at the Marijuana Biz, MJ Biz Conference. I'm here live in Las Vegas. I think we're on. Eric, are you there?
I am here. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday to you guys.
Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm so happy to be with you guys today. I'm in Las Vegas. The MJ Biz Conference is the largest conference in regards to the cannabis industry. It has everything that you can imagine. Over 24,000 participants have been here for the last 3 days. The exhibit hall has
bananas, I'm sure.
It's massive. I mean,
I've been getting all kinds of calls and text messages, man. I'm hearing nothing but good things out there.
It's a massive, and I just, I encourage folks to participate in these type of conferences because you will open up you'll meet some good people, and some of the vendors are really interested in working in developing business relationships. But your brain will start thinking about, okay, where's my place in this space? And I've met people from Houston, from Philadelphia, from Texas. I mean, there was a minority cannabis luncheon that went really well on, today is Friday, so Thursday, Wednesday, that had a room full of beautiful Black and brown people. They're trying to figure out their way and navigate through this industry. I'm gonna tell you something. We were, representation-wise, we were about a 1% representation of the people that's here. In regards to
how many people would you say overall attended?
The attendance is, is white male, white female, more so white males. And on Tuesday, ArcView, who's a leader in investing into, they are an investor organization. They had an event that night, and it was for the folks that attended their their conference prior to the MJ Biz starting. It was class, personified, very nice, upscale place, overlooking Las Vegas. And it may have been out of 500, 400 people there, may have been 10 to 15 Black people. So yeah. I say that to say that we have to show up, we have to be present. Sometimes even if you're not understanding where to go, you'll get here, and sometimes you'll go to these booths and you go to the different breakout sessions, and you will figure out and navigate your way through what the opportunities are. Mm-hmm. So it's been great. I'm here still. I'm tired a little bit, so if I'm a little sluggish, please forgive me. But it's really good stuff that's happening. I want to make sure that we, where we are. Last week, we did a show about the social justice and social equity, and where do they intersect? What does it mean? How is it important into this industry? And so we had a great guest on that talked about the social equity program and what it means. And today we have a guest with us who is a social equity applicant based out of Oakland. And we're just going to talk about this because I want you guys to understand that individuals are looking at, government officials, senators, they're looking at cities like Oakland and Oakland and San Francisco and Los Angeles, looking at their equity programs to figure out how do you balance the fact that there are some communities that are marginalized. So again, you have individuals who are going through the process right now. They're social equity applicants, and I want to hear from them. I want to give them a place to be able to talk a little bit and share and give us feedback as to what's working, what's not working. And so we call this the good, bad, and ugly of the social equity program, speaking from, from a social equity applicant standpoint. So how are you thinking about that, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think when we look at MJ Biz being the largest conference in the country right now, I know we're already in some conversations, and we have to further the conversations about how do we increase attendance, how do we make it more affordable for minority individuals who seek to be in this industry to be able to attend. And, I'm very happy to have our, guest today. I'm excited just to hear, again, some of that firsthand account on, what is it like to actually apply for one of these equity programs that are out there? Is it something that is attainable for the average person, or is this still very much a pay to play type deal? Is it only for the big suits and big wigs, or is this something that our people are actually being able to take advantage of? And I think, our guest today is going to speak to that and, tell us a little bit about his experience as well. So.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we have two guests coming on. With our first one is Mr. Lawan Payne. Lawan's a member of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I've known Lawan for almost over a year now, right, Lawan?
Yeah, just about. We met actually November 17th of last year in San Diego. So it's about a year tomorrow.
Exactly. Lawan impressed me when I first met him because he was about his business. He was very serious about this industry. And he was doing all the due diligence to make sure that he set himself up for success. And so I want you, Lawan, tell them a little bit about yourself and about your company and about, prior to getting into this industry, what were you doing and what was your interest once you realized that you wanted to get into the industry?
Okay, so I actually ended up in the cannabis industry on a fluke. I was down in LA at the time. I'm a member of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce and the LA 5 Rotary Club. I'm a Rotarian as well. And I had a death in the family. And I ended up coming home for the funeral service and support my mom because she took the death kind of rough. But I ended up staying because the laws were about to change or was on the ballot to change that November. The death was in November of 2016. So after learning about this, I've always been interested in cannabis, but I had never thought about actually entering the industry and bringing my business acumen to the industry. And I looked into it and I figured, why not? Prohibition doesn't end in every lifetime, and I'm lucky enough for it to happen in my lifetime. So why not try to take advantage of the situation, So I got serious about it December of that year. We started putting our business plan together. We kind of started doing some exploratory work to see if it was viable. And we did find a market for our platform. We ended up developing Blue Zen Medical. And Blue Zen Medical is a cannabis delivery service that rivals Ease in a sense, except our cannabis delivery times are 7 to 15 minutes because we're locally zoned near the patient's addresses. And that is pretty much where we're at now. We're like a true Uber for the cannabis industry versus us being a broker for dispensaries. We may license our software out later down the line to physical stores, but as of today, we're proprietary.
Talk a little bit about that. Those early days. Last week when we talked about the equity programs, and we talk a lot about minorities having difficulty getting access to capital. And it was mentioned how we have to start with an actual plan. Like we actually have to do the research. We actually have to, develop what the idea is, learn about the market. So, walk us through some of those early days. Like, the idea popped in your head, and what was the first thing you did? Who would you call? How'd you get the whole ball rolling?
Access to capital piece, I don't think it's so much because of a minority. I think it's because the industry is considered taboo in the eyes of those that hold capital. You have to walk them through an educational process and show them that this is, although it's federally illegal and legal on the state level, they're looking at it from the standpoint of how is this going to negatively affect my portfolio. If I give you, say, $20,000, and since because they consider this a high risk investment, let's say the terms are at 10% interest, they want to ensure they're going to get their principal plus their $2,000 in interest back. And in an industry like ours that's been illegal for most of their lives or all of their lives, they grew up in the 60s, they grew up in the 70s when weed was demonized like crack cocaine is now. And to them, it's not a recreational drug. It's not something to be had like alcohol. It's something dangerous and harmful. So you have to walk them through the fact that this is now pharmaceutical, even though the FDA hasn't approved anything. And you have to walk them through the fact that this does help people in a positive way. It helps alleviate pain. And you have to let them know, like, it's not just a psychedelic effect. There are other health benefits. You can actually, I have had to explain to many investors that you can separate the psychedelic effects of cannabis and just give people straight CBD. And you can arrive on now the pharmacies, and there are other markets that you can cross over into in order to make this profitable so you can recoup their investment. Because their worry as an investor is one thing: how am I going to make my money back? Now, on our end, as well, let me rephrase that. What was the first thing I did? I had our mini investor meetings and that was from January 2017 to June 2017, traveling all up and down the state. Nobody invested. Just let me put that out there. And it's because they were unfamiliar. Because of my connections down south, I was able to meet with some pretty prominent people, and they all liked the concept. They understood what we were doing because they were familiar with Uber. They did not understand why it would be viable to the cannabis industry. So you're not going to find seed funding. It's going to be very difficult. I'm not going to phrase that. It's going to be very difficult to find seed funding for a venture. You need to come in with books. You need to come in with a P&L and projections and actuals, maybe 90 days of actuals. And you need to come in with a variance analysis and explain to an investor why you didn't hit your numbers or why you exceeded the numbers that you originally expected. Because they're looking at this from a financial standpoint and a financial standpoint only. I mean, they're investors, it's a job. But it's up to you to pitch them and show them that you're investing in me because you don't understand the industry. You have to invest in me and trust I'll be a good steward of your capital. Right. And a lot of our people don't, when they approach it, they literally, I've been in so many group investor meetings, like kind of like a pitch deck situation, where people come to the pitch stage and they say, I've been selling weed for 20 years illegally, and this is my chance to do it legally. An investor, one, doesn't want to hear that.
No, not at all.
So it's a preparation piece as well on our end. We have to educate ourselves and realize just because we've been doing something illicitly for so long doesn't mean that we're going to be experts in a legal compliant market.
So Lawan, talk us through the application. What parts did you find that were maybe easy, but what things did you find that was challenging? Things on that application that you really have to do your due diligence and be prepared for when you submit your application to get a license?
So the permitting aspect on the local level, I find to be more difficult than the state licensing level. If you overcome the local government's permitting, and everybody's different here in Oakland, it is a bit strenuous. The barrier to entry here more so is access to real estate in a zoned area within the city that allows cannabis activity. Once the commercial real estate brokers discovered that their properties were in the cannabis zones, they also found out that if they do lease to someone in our industry, they may have to forfeit their property to the federal government for allowing illicit activities on the premises. So that's a big risk that they're taking. Supposedly, I don't think there's actually been any cases of the federal government taking property, but because of that, they're using it as leverage to say, hey, Mr. Dispensary owner, if you want to sign this 20-year lease for a business that you have to renew annually, I'm going to charge you, if let's say the square footage is $350 a square foot, you're going to pay me $14 a square foot, and you're going to give me first and last. And I'm going to lock you into this 20-year lease just in case they take my building. I know I got paid up front. Now, the majority of people in our situation in the social equity program don't have access to that type of capital to agree to those terms. So if you weren't able to find a general applicant in Oakland, a general applicant is somebody who's affluent or has the capital to subsidize a equity or social equity applicant's costs, essentially, as far as the security and rent for the business's operations for the first 36 months. So their responsibility is essentially to make sure that we get 1,000 square feet of space, we don't have rent overhead, and that our building is secure. We still have to pay for utilities, operations, salaries, et cetera, et cetera. Still run the business, but those three main hurdles are overcome. A lot of issues that that my constituents have had is that people are agreeing to be their general applicant, but not following through. The city failed to put a deadline on when they had to execute these terms for the equity applicant. And because of that, people are saying, hey, my general applicant got their license and hasn't called me since, but the city didn't say, hey, when does the 3 years have to start? They can open their dispensary, run the business for a year, and then
decide to pull the trigger. Yeah.
And decide to pull the trigger. But in that scenario, now a lot of the market has been saturated, and it's less likely that a newcomer is going to succeed, especially when they're trying to establish a new brand for their business in a market that everybody's rushing towards.
Wow. So the if I'm hearing you correctly, the general applicant was who you as a minority applicant would have to, you're required to be attached to. They get their license, and now they become de facto, wow.
Like what's a good word? I like to call it a.
I was trying to put it delicately.
The other day, like really well, it's a surrogate. They become a surrogate for you to flourish. Mm-hmm. But they
can impact your entire business model and your timing to enter the market, just because like you said, there's no timetable or restrictions on when they need to begin that 3-year relationship.
Exactly. But that is also to say on their end, it is not mandatory for a social equity applicant to have a general applicant. One, if you're lucky enough to get someone to partner with you and subsidize these costs for you, you can't force them to because you don't know what their situation is. None of the dispensaries that were granted licenses last November, out of the 8 of them, none of them are open. And that's because it takes a while for them to open. So that could be they might not be helping their social equity applicants because they themselves have run into financial straits or binds or whatever have you that's prevented them from opening shop. And you can't support another when you have no revenue coming in. So I mean, try to look at it from both sides of the fence. It's not a one-sided conversation. But I think that the city should have put provisions in place to
set some timetables at the very least,
Yeah. I mean, they're doing a better job of it now. This year they've had a couple, like anything, invention takes time, the first program to do it. So trial and error is to be expected. But another issue is that a lot of the general applicants are waiting to pull the trigger because the city has a $3 million fund for the social equity applicants. It's an interest-free loan program. You can get up to $100,000 based on certain tiers that you may qualify for. I think the entry tier is $5,000. That's just to get incorporated, get the basics out of the way. And I think the most, each tier requires different, thresholds that you have to meet where your business should be at. Which is cool. That's fine. But now a lot of general applicants are saying, well, I don't want to give you all these resources until you qualify for the city loan program. So I know you actually have the capital to run the business and I'm not just paying a lease for those. So, and that's another issue. It's like they understand the person they're investing in isn't actually ready to launch. So they don't want to put the capital in place just to be lost.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say in regards to what the applicants, what are some of the things that you would say are hindering them from being, even qualified for that loan program? Is the loan program already currently, operational? So say, for instance, you were able.
Yeah, the loan program actually, I think, launched Monday, this past week.
Past week, you said?
Yeah, this past Monday that just came.
Yeah. Okay. And any idea on the process? I know there's different stages and different thresholds that you have to meet. But, had they, published any timetables in terms of, if you apply, how long it will take to get you to, get that first initial amount or get up to the maximum amount? Yeah,
it's about money moves slow. Let's just be honest here. Even when you're getting a traditional loan, it doesn't come immediately for the most part. Here are the loan tier requirements. They said it takes about 4 weeks for it to come through. But here are what you qualify for. So if you're just now establishing your business, you can have $5,000 to do your legal fees, brand, consulting, and staff and contractors. That's essentially what that's for. It's tier 2, it's $10,000. You get insurance, bookkeeping systems, fees, and state licenses. These are the things that you're supposed to do with the money. It's not just for this, but basically when you show them gross receipts, this is what they want to see the cash went towards. And what's cool about this program,
No, I said I like it. Go ahead.
And what's cool about this program, what I really appreciate about it is if, let's say, for instance, we're in our business at tier 5. So we're almost done with it. We're about ready to launch. We're just having some things done at the dispensary location. You can apply for each one of these tiers individually. So you don't have to just apply for tier 5. I can apply for tier 5, tier 4, tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 all at the same time and receive that $100,000 loan. However, the debt has to be serviced 30 days after you receive the money from the city. a lot of another issue that people are facing is, one, if they say they get $30,000 loan in tier 3, their loan payment is $625, and if they can't open their business for 8 months and start bringing revenue, they're going to be using the money they receive to service the debt, although it's interest free. So I think that may be a barrier as well. I would hope the city would push back that timetable as far as when the debt needs to start being serviced. Another big issue is that they're issuing the checks in the names of the equity applicants because of banking barriers. And because of that, I also think that may run into some issues. The social equity applicants are signing personal guarantees for this capital. So if they default on the loan, 90% of startups fail. So if they fail in their startup and they spend the money, they're now, I mean, granted, they're not paying interest, but they're now $100,000 in debt when they're already a social equity applicant who qualified because they didn't have capital to be a general applicant. So it's a catch-22. And I think people don't look at their exposure when they apply for these or they're not going to look at their exposure as they apply for these loans.
I mean, I think you raised some really, really good points, some things that, as I think about it, there's still a lot of work that we need to do with some of these equity programs in terms of, adding some teeth, adding some, timetables that, and even some protections for the applicant. That when you said that they were issuing that in their name, that was that's a big red flag for me, because I agree with you. Then it becomes their personal liability versus the business's liability. And
yeah, they're essentially sole proprietors in that sense.
Right. And
that's dangerous.
That's very dangerous. And I'm hoping that, and maybe you can speak to this. How are the equity applicants having, or are they seeking, legal assistance and having access to quality legal advisors and so on? Or is that part of the capital issue, in the startup anyway?
Well, I would say the city has a technical assistance program called Make Green Go. It is ran by LaWanda Knox, and her husband is an attorney, and he's also helping out with that program. I'm not sure what their relationship is with the equity applicants directly. I know, just like any law practice, that it's not free. I'm sure there are fees involved. I know that they are giving the equity program applicants some material. I don't want to speak against the material because I didn't find it helpful personally, but that might be because of where we're at in our business. I'm not sure if a novice would look at this and say, hey, I think this is useful. Who knows? But I personally don't think it's enough for them to sink their teeth into a business that's as compliant as this. This isn't like opening a t-shirt or tattoo shop. There's a lot of government regulation involved. There's a lot of compliance involved. There's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of ways that you can shoot yourself in the foot by simply mislabeling inventory when it comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what the equity applicant wants to do with their business and the type of license that they're applying for, those things only become more strenuous. If you're a distributor, you got a lot of overhead. You're in charge of recouping taxes from the retailers you sell to, like myself, and giving it to the state. You're in charge of quality control and the inventory that you bring in from the cultivators and resell to retailers like myself. So it depends on where you're at. And I don't think people really weigh the cost benefit of the license they want. I think they just think in their head, I get to legally sell weed, I'm going to do that. But they don't realize I'm going to be taxed at the city level, I'm going to be taxed at the state level. I'm going to lose a lot of inventory due to shrinkage. I got a lot of overhead for operations. I got to keep the lights on. It may not even be a viable business opportunity for you once you finish your business plan. But they don't have the tools to sit. I mean, anybody can go online and get a business plan template, but understanding and comprehending it is different. There's no one there to hold their hand through the process.
Right. Wow. And so what are some of the, I know, go ahead, Ross.
No, I was going to say, LaWanda, so I'm gonna take it back to, I attended a conference and I met this young man from Oakland, and he spoke about the challenges with the program. And he said he was really frustrated because some of the general applicants would refer to the equity applicants as chips. And they would say, for example,
our leverage, their leverage is us. They get points for each one of us they have on their application.
Right.
We are.
So my concern is their leverage is us. So if their leverage is us, then how do we make sure that we close the loophole? Because if on the on-site of getting an application or getting a license, your leverage is us. But then after you get your application, and after you get your permit and you're ready to go and do your thing, how do we make sure that we don't get left behind? And I had a gentleman that made a comment that maybe they should be also the equity applicant should be a part of the general applicant's application or permit, meaning if the equity applicant's permit or if their business is not thriving, then the general applicant is also not able to proceed forward if or is not able to have his business going forward. If you understand where I'm coming from, they're trying to
understand exactly where you're coming from. The city, and that's tough because if I was a general applicant incubating a social equity applicant, that puts me at a disadvantage to incubate this person. I'm more likely to just take my chances in applying for a permit independently because I don't want the overhead of having to ensure this other person's business is going to thrive. I already have to pay the rent for 3 years. I have to give them 1,000 square feet of space. I have to put my name on the lease and sublease to them. So if they default, I'm still on the hook. And I'm still on the hook for utilities if I'm a general applicant as well. I think that the general applicants have enough responsibility as is, to be frank with you. I don't think that we should put any more pressure on them to be incentivized to help us. I think we have to help ourselves, and that's the problem. I think that a lot of these people, and I'm not speaking ill of us, but we come from a welfare situation here in the police beats that were granted. If you live in certain police beats or zip codes in the city that were in the hood, you qualified for the program. And a lot of these people that are qualifying have been on welfare for a majority of their lives because they've been selling weed and don't have a legal income and have to pay taxes. So they don't understand that they're looking at this like another welfare program. And when you're on welfare, you typically don't seek to do for self. You just accept. So when it comes to an environment like this, where you're handed, let's say 15% of your infrastructure and you have to build the remaining 85%, you don't know where to find the tools and you don't have the guidance to go get those tools and you don't speak the language needed to use those tools once you acquire them. So that's the disadvantage is education here. I think this is more of an educational barrier than anything else. And like I when I speak to a lot of the equity applicants and let them know this is difficult. I'm not just trying to discourage you from this path. I think that if you succeed, it'll make you a much better person and you'll do very well in future business ventures outside of cannabis because the skills you acquire, you'll take with you on your life's journey.
Sure.
But a lot of them aren't willing to sit there and do the homework. A lot of them aren't willing to crack an accounting book and look at how to do basic bookkeeping. A lot of them are willing to figure out basic marketing. Like a lot of people I speak to ask me how they're going, or I ask them how they're planning on marketing their delivery service once they get up and running. And they tell me they're going to do Facebook ads. Facebook shadow blocks all cannabis related material. So you can't do that. Mm-hmm. If that's your business model, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're not doing the due diligence and realizing, hey, this is a good idea in concept, but when I execute it, is it practical? No, it's not. And I tell them, make sure your plans are practical. It sounds good in your head, but can you actually do it in real life? A lot of things that they tell me they want to do, they can't do. Like opening bank accounts. A lot of them don't know you can't open accounts. Bank account as a business, especially as a sole proprietorship. I ask them how their legal structure is, how they're separating their IP from their operations. They're telling me, hey, I don't understand that, They don't get that I should have my intellectual property for my brand in a separate company from my actual cannabis operation. So if I get shut down, I can start up and relicense my IP to my new company. They don't get it. And I give them this game for free, and I'm not selling it to them. But even when I'm educating them this, I typically pull out a piece of paper and draw it out for them because most people are visual learners. And I can still tell there's a comprehension barrier. They get it on the surface, but they're not understanding what I'm saying.
Right. Do you know of any businesses or people that that went through the process, got a permit, and have either decided not to pursue it further, or just they basically are not gonna, they're not able to pursue what they want to pursue?
Well, the biggest issue, and this goes back to the real estate piece I was speaking about earlier.
Right.
The city permits are conditional based on you showing you have space usage.
Okay.
If you're not being incubated by a general applicant, I'm going to be frank with you. It's a long shot that you're going to get real estate because real estate's scarce, as is in any cities of this size. The zoning regulations are that you can't be within 600 feet of a church, residential area, daycare, basically anything of that nature. So that shrinks the space that you can be in a lot. And then the commercial spaces that are in those zones have been leased out for years. And the leases are either not expiring anytime soon because commercial real estate leases are 10, 20, 35 years, you know? So the spaces that are available, that the general applicants that are incubating people, more than likely already snapped up. These are people trying to get in the game a year and a half after the game started. So it's going to be incredibly difficult. Huh?
So it's key for folks that are listening to us and hearing Lawan and hearing his story and how he articulates everything that's been going on and his thoughts about it. And I appreciate it so much, Lawan. My takeaway just from that little section is if you're in a state that there's there's not legalization. Let's take Texas.
Uh-huh.
Texas does not have a full-blown medical marijuana program.
Uh-huh.
So if you're in Texas, my recommendation is if you know that you want to cultivate, you know you want to do everything. You want to cultivate, you want to process, or what have you.
You need to be doing the due diligence.
Start looking at warehouses. Go ahead, Luan.
You need to be doing the due diligence before the laws are passed.
Right.
You need to think, and this is honestly, you got to think like a billionaire. You got to be in the market before the market's there. And you got to set up your infrastructure before the law says I can do this. You should be ready to flip a switch when the law says I can do this. So and this is not saying you sign leases and go put your name on these properties that you can't use yet because the laws might not change. But cultivate relationships with the owners. Cultivate the relationships with people that maybe own a warehouse and say in the area that you are assuming that will be more than likely zoned for cannabis when the laws pass. And talk to them and say, hey, can I rent out 20,000 square feet in your warehouse and build a wall in this section if laws pass? So you already have those things set in place with terms already set in place. It's like insurance in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about due diligence here and about needing to do the research, networking. You know, what are some of the tools you use to help get you going? You sound like you had you came to the table with a lot of knowledge and information, and some folks will come with their own strengths and their own knowledge base from other industries and so on. So talk a little bit about what industry you came from, and you obviously had some areas that you already had in place, but talk about how you closed that gap in those areas where you were lacking or where you didn't have much direction.
Okay. Well, I have kind of a unique story. I started my first company when I was 15. I still run that company today. And I learned early on to hire partners that have my weaknesses. So we're a complete unit. I think of it like, are you familiar with Captain Planet from back in the day?
Say it one more time.
Are you familiar with Captain Planet from back in the day?
Okay, yeah.
So I think of it like I'm a piece of that pie. If I'm Earth, I need to go find my fire.
Absolutely. Hey, what we say this weekend in Vegas, Ross? Find your tribe.
Find your tribe.
Find your tribe. Like I'm not a social butterfly. I'm an intellectual misfit and kind of a reclusive nerd. So I'm not good at sales because of that. I'm good at sales.
That sounds like a T-shirt slogan, by the way.
I mean, it's the reality of my situation. I enjoy technology. My background's in tech and finance, and those are not social activities. So I'm always by myself or reading or doing something. So I hired sales guys or sales officers and marketing people that enjoy talking to other people because although I do like talking to other people, I'm just not going to put myself out there. It's not my nature. So you got to realize and be honest with yourself, like, this is what I'm able to do well. This is what I'm not able to do well. And you have to find people that build on your weaknesses so you have a strong team. That's number one in any business venture. Number two is function. And no matter what you do, things about business will not change, whether you're selling T-shirts, websites, cannabis, consulting services, biotechnologies. There's going to be operations. There's going to be accounting and finance. There's going to be marketing, depending on what you're doing. And there's going to be sales, because without sales, there's no business. I would say study those 4 fundamental business functions. Get a team of people that you're comfortable with that basically is a mastermind for those 4 fundamental business functions, and then execute. Because no matter what industry you go into, it's all the same. The product changes.
That's right.
But the functions doesn't change. You're still going to have accounting. It's either going to be first in or first out. It's not going to change too much though. So once you have that kind of net, you can cast it as wide as you wish. And that would be my advice to startup entrepreneurs: is make sure you're partnering with people that build on your weaknesses. Let go of your ego. It's in business, it's not about ego. It's not about I, it's about we. It's a team effort. Don't focus on equity. A lot of people want to say they own the business. They're gung-ho about being the CEO of their company. Maybe you're not fit to be the CEO, and that's okay. And they need to be okay with not carrying the title, because it's not a title, it's a position, and that position comes with a lot of responsibility. And I think they need to realize that first, that they're sitting in a seat of responsibility, not a seat of, hey, I'm the CEO of a company.
But can you fill those shoes?
Can you fill those shoes? And majority of people
and
don't
I think
want to.
being an owner, right, for real. I mean, that's a huge responsibility to step into that role. And I think sometimes we get hung up on this whole idea that I own my own business and I'm the CEO, I'm the decision maker. But, when you're operating a very serious business in a very highly regulated industry, that means that, all roads lead back to you. And,
Exactly.
That's something that you definitely got to consider, whether or not you have the skill set for that.
And I tell people, like, yeah, it's fun. You get to tell people you're the CEO, and people's reactions are cool the first few times, but it gets old fast. And eventually it's like staring into a dark abyss, chewing glass. And you're hoping that you come out on the other side still whole.
Yeah.
That's what being a CEO is like.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, in all entrepreneurial ventures, it has its ups and downs. But depending on your team, depending on their spirit, because ultimately the culture that you develop in your business is going to be an extension of your personality. It's going to be a shadow of yourself. So if you're not that super charismatic CEO, let's take Steve Ballmer, for instance, because that guy's insane. He was CEO of Microsoft. Everybody loved Steve Ballmer because he brought the energy to the table. Bill Gates wasn't like that. He was more like me. He wanted to be in the background, but he understood marketing, sales, and technology. So it just depends on what your skill set is.
Absolutely.
So Lamont, let's talk about this. Right now, again, we have states that are looking at the Oakland program. They're looking at San Francisco. They're looking at Los Angeles. Sacramento is up next, it seems like, and Fresno. Think about, states outside of, cities and, in other different states. Is there maybe recommendations for, a city who wants to bring on a social equity program that you can think of, something to do or not do differently?
I would say incentivize the commercial brokers and landlords to give equity applicants property, maybe if it's just for like 6 months to a year, not give, but to
make available,
thank you, property to these social equity applicants under reasonable terms. That is ultimately the largest barrier to entry here, because you can have all your ducks in order, but the one thing you can't control is the market availability. If there's no property in the market, there's no property.
Right. And what about from, with the equity program, would you recommend keeping, modifying, or, getting rid of altogether the component where, you're attached to a general applicant, for some incubation and
no,
so
I think the general applicant idea is great. So I don't know if I hope Patty doesn't care for this. My general applicant is Patty O'Brien. She's amazing. She has been a great mentor to me. She has guided me. She has given me all the tools I needed to succeed, and she wants to see me succeed. It's in her personal interest, outside of the business, just as a human being. She has a lot of compassion for what she does. And I was blessed to find her as a partner. Now, just like any business relationship, you have to choose your partners wisely. If you get in bed with a shark, you're going to get bit. And that's just the situation.
Yeah, Patty's the general applicant for for Lawan and 5 other general equity applicants. And we actually have a partnership with Patty. Her name of her company is called Gocana. They're based in Oakland. She's very compassionate. She's a nurse by trade who now has gotten into the cultivation, manufacturing, processing, and distribution business, and is incubating these applicants. And I do think that Patty is an anomaly. And I don't know what you think, Lawan. I don't think
Patty is an anomaly. She is not. She is definitely an exception to the rule. And I think she's the first person in like history to actually get a cannabis license through equity, through incubation of this many applicants.
Yeah. So the thing about it was, I think she had she was very transparent and very sincere in her approach of wanting to do the right thing for the equity applicants and not use them to further her own cause. Of course, everyone wants to grow a business. I had someone here at this conference say, well, I'll partner with InfraMM if it'll help me get a license. Well,
give me 1 second, Roz.
Okay, no problem. I get it that partnering with or working with maybe a disadvantaged business or trying to help out and give and have a give back, if that you'll do it if you get a license. But Patty was someone, in my opinion, who wasn't trying to say, hey, I'll work with these equity applicants because I know it'll get me a license and then I'll be able to go on and do what I need to do. She really wanted to walk hand in hand and be a partner. And that's something that I want you guys to think about, is that partnership means that you are having conversation, you're having weekly or bi-weekly or at least monthly meetings with the general applicant, that you guys are in sync, that he's sharing or he or she is sharing with you as an equity applicant, and you as an equity applicant, you're sharing and saying, hey, I'm having challenges, and that general applicant should be able to be there to maybe give you some support and maybe help you through your challenges and go from there. The state of California has earmarked $10 million so far to help with the equity programs. And some of the things that I would like to see them do is actually earmark a legal fund, because I think sometimes the relationship between the general applicant and the equity applicant and that legalese right there, you need to have someone that has your back and that's going to look out after you in your best interest. A general applicant can afford to have someone, an attorney, and a fleet of attorneys who will support his interests. I think equity applicants need to have legal support.
And not just between the equity applicant and the general applicant, but he talked about, if you're going to take the funds from the actual city, you need someone advising you what is now going to be your responsibility, and that, I mean, that's a very, very the fact that that check is being written in your name, there's, some legal, implications, tax implications, some, liability implications that you need to have a clear understanding from. I really like that idea, Roz, of, creating, access to legal advice, sound legal advice and representation for these applicants, because
imagine if they had a fund where they did contractual agreements with attorneys who worked on behalf of social equity applicants. So you as a social equity applicant didn't have to go and pay someone for legal advice or support or looking at your documents. They were getting paid by the city or by the state. And that was the part of, so it's a win-win. If you have an attorney who's a cannabis attorney, that's contract business that you can count on from a funding standpoint. And then for a social equity applicant, they have that legal person to go to. And I just think there has to be some type of marrying of those type of resources, even on the accounting side. And so I know that we have technical support, and that's so key. I actually saw LaWanda Knox, who is the technical, she has the technical contract with the city of Oakland. She was here in Las Vegas at MJ Biz. She and I are going to talk more. I want to learn more about, her challenges, her ups and downs. And as we as an organization are growing, how we can maybe help and support her. And so it's just critical that we think outside of the box. And just like in Colorado, when we were in Florida, we would always go to these Senate meetings, and we would have folks from Colorado come up and they would talk about, this is what Colorado is doing and this is why it's so great. We'll come to find out it wasn't as great as we thought it was. And it's come to find out they're having some real issues across the board. So I don't want folks to come in and go to a New Jersey or a Missouri or New York and say, hey, this is how a social equity program should run, until we get some of the feedback from people like a Lawan, and I had Alicia with Sweet House on. We'll get her on next week if we can. But we need to listen to them, and we need to come together and come up with solutions versus just kind of, talking about it.
Yeah. I think it's some really good conversation here. Another thing that I'd like to see is, we talked about the networking piece. Being at conferences like MJ Biz is vital for businesses when you're thinking about setting up your sales pipelines, and who are you going to sell to? Who are going to be some of your vendors that you purchase your raw materials or other needs from? It being at conferences like this, it does put you into a place of a lot of like-minded individuals that can help your business grow and thrive. But I think, in addition to just being there, people need to understand how to take advantage of those type of opportunities that are there. So, I'm not sure when it comes to like the technical assistance. I know that may deal a lot with, business plans and technical writing for applications and standard operating procedures and, a lot of the business, side of things. But this industry is very much a social industry. And is opportunities can come just from being in the right place at the right time, having your 30-second elevator pitch, having the things that you need from a networking standpoint in line can really help your business to go from 0 to 60, to really kick into a implementing phase versus that business idea startup phase. And so I'd like to see some of these equity programs implement, some funding to help, cover some of the scholarships to go to these conferences. We know that, a lot of these conferences are, and I applaud them, my hat's off to them for creating scholarships and creating opportunities for, underserved populations to attend. And I think we still got a long way to go with that. And but I'm a firm believer that this can't all be on the private industry to provide solutions for, that our government also has to consider how do we create some opportunities as well, because it was a systematic policing of certain areas. That's policy. That happened at the government level. And so the government has a responsibility for correcting some of this. And I think as we're establishing these equity programs, establishing, opportunities for access to legal counsel, establishing, opportunities for funding to go to conferences and, training and network and the technical assistance, that's all a part of it.
Let me tell you, the conferences are so key. I met this guy, they have a CRM software platform for dispensaries. They have another platform for distribution. There's so many really cool, neat gadgets and things that are out there that will help you streamline your business. LaJuan, as we're wrapping up, because we have like another 10 minutes, one thing that was critical in my mind, or you tell me this, how critical is that business plan, and how long did it take you to write your business plan for where you want to go? And on a scale of 1 to 10, let our folks know they're listening to us how important that business plan is in order to help you navigate through, growing, getting your business started.
Well, the business plan for me is still evolving. It evolves all the time. So I would say that the business plan initially took a few weeks to write, just because I wasn't familiar with the cannabis industry. I had a lot of assumptions that I needed to validate before I could put them in the business plan. I would say it took me about 3 weeks. My advice to those who aren't familiar with business plans is, because of my background in technology and finance, it wasn't my first business plan, so I have experience in crafting them. I would say go to a bank, apply for a loan. Don't expect to get the loan. If you're approved for the loan, don't take the loan. At the end of your pitch with the banker, ask them for a redacted business plan that they funded. And they'll give you a copy of a redacted business plan that was funded, so you'll have an idea of what the commercial side of finance is looking for, as far as returns and collateral, et cetera, et cetera.
Key point, don't take the loan if you are approved. Seek legal advice before signing on any dotted lines for loans.
Yeah, nowadays, up till interest rates changing a couple weeks ago, money was basically free. So the banks would have given you a $30,000 loan with no credit, because you have on the basis that you have no credit and you may be able to build your credit with this loan. So don't take the loan. Don't take the loan. Use the bank as a what's the word I'm looking for? I guess a funnel to get access to business plans that aren't online and that are verified that they actually looked at and said, this is worth me giving money to. Because
it's a business plan hack.
A business plan hack, essentially. When you go look for private money, because you're going to have to in the cannabis industry when you're ready to raise capital, it's easier to then say, hey, I know the banks are funding this project based on these parameters. Maybe this private investor will fund my project if I mirror these same options. But once again, that goes back. I mean, execution is always different than the business plan. It's not, nobody's business plan is exact. But it also helps you as a business owner craft what you want to do with your vision, because it makes it technical. It's like playing with Legos in a sense. You have an idea, and the business plan gives you milestones you have to hit in order to see that idea come to fruition. And it shows you the difficulty level of seeing that idea come to fruition. Because you might say, I want 30% market share in the Bay Area market. But when you do your research, your market research for your marketing plan and tie that in with your business plan, you might see, oh, the market's overly saturated. I might be able to only capture 12% of the market that I wanted. Is that still worth my time and efforts at this point? You know?
I think very, very smart technique. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. That's what my grandmother told me. Very smart technique in thinking, how do I walk in and gain experience firsthand, and you'll be surprised the resources they'll give you in order to say you didn't qualify or it's not there yet. Let me give you the resources that you need to help you kind of shore up what you're doing.
Exactly. The banks want to loan you money.
The cannabis industry, guys, is new and unique, but some of the business that you have to do in order to shore up your business is the same thing you would do with any other entity. So let's say, for example, if you want to have a drugstore retail, outlet, or if you want a drugstore, or if you want to have a retail store, like a clothing store, what have you. Well, the model of that is very similar to a dispensary. Instead of having clothing, you're going to have cannabis. So the idea, what I'm saying to you guys is, if you go online, you can find retail templates, business plan templates that are out there. You just have to now be able to extrapolate information from a retail clothing to now cannabis, and then go from there. But I don't know about you guys, but for me, I just need sometimes a framework of where to go, and then I can go in and chug and plug and fill in from there, and then add more to it. So that would be something as a recommendation. M4MM is currently working or talking with the ArcView group. They are a data analysis company in the cannabis space, and we're talking with them about providing our members with some data, so that if you're building out your business plan, or if you're looking at, creating your financials, that you have some true hardcore data that you can take to a financial officer or to an investor, or to, when you have to pitch your business, that you have some true data that that is true, authentic, real, and that will help you tell your story.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the tough parts out there, is finding, you'll find information, but whether that information is accurate, whether it's, in a format that you can actually understand and discern what you're, soaking up. I think that is a hard part of it. And I think that is where, for folks who are just trying to enter this industry, and your knowledge isn't there, saying that everybody smokes cannabis, or, we're in a legal market, and now it's so many people in the US and Canada who use cannabis, and that's why my business model is going to work. I think you have to go a lot deeper than that. And you have to understand, questions like, how are you going to acquire your customers? And how much does it actually cost you to acquire those customers? And
right.
Are you a single use business? Or are you trying to retain customers? And then you get into, well, how much is it going to cost you to retain your customers? And so there's a lot of reading, a lot of, knowledge that you need to bring to the table, beyond just the business side, beyond just the cannabis side. You're going to have to become the expert of your field, your niche, your area, before anybody else is going to put a dime into your business. So you have to become that expert first. And that means you got to spend the time, you got to learn the information, you got to put in the hours. No other way around it.
I want you guys, I'm still live here at the MJ BizCon. This is how many businesses, look how big this is, that are exhibitors here at this conference. And so I'm going to get some of the pocket guys. This is one of the pocket guys, and I'm going to get some extra ones. If anyone's interested in seeing the lineup of businesses, because if there's businesses that are already in business, don't forget the ancillary support services in the cannabis industry could be a great fit for you. So I know that you're not here. I know we've been talking about social equity, but know that I have some resources. If you're interested in getting a listing of all the exhibitors so that you can do your own personal research and see what kind of brands are out there or see who's doing what, it doesn't take much. I met a guy in a packaging company. He's looking for people that want to get into packaging in your state, and he'll help you get your business going and help you get contracts for packaging. So that's the beautiful part about, this industry, that you don't have to get in touching plant, that you can get in from an ancillary standpoint. If there's wonderful, wonderful people that you can connect you. I'll make sure if you're interested in getting the pocket guide, I'll get extra. We'll photocopy it. We'll create a PDF or whatever. You can email us at m4mmunited@gmail.com, m4mmunited@gmail.com. Just say, hey, I want the MJ Biz pocket guide or the information. We'll make sure you get it. Lawan, I want to thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I think you are doing fantastic things. The key is that he's been going through this process for a year, and he still is not in his space yet. He's still working and getting everything put together, but he's not giving up. You got any last parting words for us, Lawan? Anything you want to say to everybody that's listening, and just any words of advice?
Yeah, be patient. Be very patient. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Any business is. You're going to run into a lot of obstacles along the way. The goal is, when you run into those obstacles, is to overcome them. And that overcoming that obstacle may be a learning barrier or educational barrier, or not having the right contacts, or not knowing how to go about doing something correctly because you just don't know how, and you have to teach yourself to do that. Be patient with yourself. Don't get frustrated. If you do get frustrated, calm yourself down and come back to your center and realize, this is my objective. Everything else around this objective is clutter, and I need to hit this target.
Absolutely.
I would suggest reading 2 books over the next 6 months or so. One is called Blue Ocean Strategy. The other is called the 10-Day MBA. Blue Ocean Strategy is about discovering new markets. Because the cannabis industry is in such a land grab right now, it's going to be difficult to retain customers because they have so many options. There is no name brand cannabis business in anyone's market that I'm aware of that's the go-to. And there's a new opportunity every day. Each day when somebody opens up their shop because they've now reached that milestone where they can now operate, they're looking to take market share out of your potential market or your current market. Huh? No. So I would recommend reading the Blue Ocean Strategy book. You can find it on Amazon. Also pick up the 10-Day MBA, because that'll teach you about those business functions that I spoke about briefly earlier: finance, marketing, operations, and sales. And 10-Day MBA is a bit difficult. It's a bit of a difficult read. I would suggest picking up a business dictionary as you read it, just so you're not confused by the terms. But once you get that comprehension ingrained in your brain, it'll be easier to run and operate your business. For sure.
Thank you, Lawan. Eric, you got the last word, brother. Sign us out. Tell us what we need to know. Next week, we're trying to get some powerhouse attorneys that are professors at some of our
The week following. Next week is Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's right. Thanksgiving is next week. So if we're not on next week, the following week. But Eric, go ahead and take us out of here.
Yeah, as always, everybody, I hope that you have had a very powerful week this week, and I hope that you take this weekend to spend time with family and friends and rejuvenate, relax, and get ready to hit the ground running on Monday. One of the things I always encourage people is that as you are starting your business, don't forget why. Many of us left 9-to-5 jobs. Many of us left the corporate world to get out of that rat race, to spend more time with family, to spend more time working on our own personal health, our own personal goals. So don't get lost in the sauce and forget, as you're starting your business, to continue to take care of yourself, take care of your families, make sure you're growing as an individual each day. So love you guys. See you guys. Hope you have a great Turkey Day.
Great. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Lawan. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I'm Roz McCarthy. You can email me at roz@m4mmunited.org. Minorities for Medical Marijuana is here at MJ BizCon. We're setting it off. We're representing. We're making sure we're going to bring this information back home to you. So call me, Facebook me, whatever you need. If you need something, if it's in my power to make it happen, I will. Love you guys and have a great day. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Was this